good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning for another edition of TC Live. My name is Koromane Koroye. I am TechCabal's managing editor, and we have the the privilege of being joined by Phiona Okumu, who is the head of music Sub-Saharan Africa at Spotify. We have M.I Abaga with us. He's a rapper, entrepreneur, businessman, all around awesome person. And then we have a couple of people from the TechCabal team on the call as well. Thank you all for joining us. Before we dive right in and I bring on Phiona to introduce herself and to, get the conversation started, I just want to quickly, explain why this conversation is very important. Now, we know that a couple of weeks ago, Spotify announced expansion into more African countries, but we really want to kind of break down why this expansion is so important by just sharing some insights about streaming numbers and what it looks like in the global music industry. So by 2026, it is estimated that the revenue that will come from global streaming numbers will be around $45 billion. And the percentage of that revenue in 2019 that came from those streaming numbers was about 56%, right? So these are fairly high numbers. Of course, when you look at that estimated revenue as well, you understand that the streaming industry is a big one. It is active, and basically people are consuming music, right? But now when we fine tune those numbers and we kind of put the spotlight on Africa, we'll see that African artists are barely scratching the surface here. So in 2020, African artists accounted for just 8.3 billion in terms of number of streams. That was the highest number of streams for any artist in 2020. There's an estimated revenue on Apple Music and Spotify streams that's around $97 million. And the highest number of streams for Sub-Saharan African artists in 2020 was around 435 million. And the estimated revenue in Apple Music and Spotify came from 435.6 million streams, and that number is $5.1 million. Okay, so it just when you kind of compare that to the global numbers that we shared before, you can see that there is a huge disparity there. So some of the factors that are affecting our streaming numbers include a low level of digital literacy and obviously high data costs, which is something that we know is prevalent here and something that, a lot of people who consume music have talked about it, that data is expensive in some African countries. The numbers are really high, and we know that that's also affecting how people consume music, how they stream music. Okay, so just keeping those numbers in mind, we're now going to kind of go into the agenda of today's conversation. I'll have each of them come up and introduce themselves, and then we're going to go right into the conversation. We have questions. We have curated some from people who registered for the event, some are in-house, and we're hoping that this conversation will be fun, it will be engaging, and and most importantly, that people will be informed about Spotify's decision to come into Nigeria. And then we're also going to hear from M.I about what this means, implications, just from his own perspective as somebody who's been in the music industry for such a long time. Okay, so we'll get started. I'll ask Phiona to speak first, just tell us a little bit about herself, and then M.I will go on after her.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for having me, Koromane. It's really nice to meet you. I've been following your work for quite some time, so it's just a real pleasure to be on here. My name is Phiona Okumu, and I look after Sub-Saharan Africa for Spotify, just in terms of the music team. So I with a bunch of other editors and members of the team, look after the music strategy for Sub-Saharan Africa.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Phiona. This is my first time, actually. We've been on the phone a few times, but
yeah. Now this is the real life.
Yes, and congratulations. This is a big deal.
Thank you.
Glad to celebrate. Yes, glad to celebrate with you. I mean, this has been a great week for the music business in terms of just representation. Women are doing amazing things, and the big announcements. And yours wasn't this week, but congratulations all the same. To everyone, my name is M.I Abaga. I'm a musician. I'm a learning. What's the word for? I'm educating to be an entrepreneur. Yeah, I just love the music business. I love to see the growth that Africa is experiencing. I mean, if you just take a snapshot and you put it against the world, there's so much room for growth. But if you take a 20-year snapshot and just what that growth curve has been on the continent in terms of where we're coming from and where we are, a 20 or 30-year snapshot is just so much to be proud of. African young people and musicians and artists have done just an amazing job in terms of giving so much to the continent, giving so much great art, and we're glad to see that the world is starting to pay attention.
Thank you so much to the both of you. So speaking, I have here also bios for the both of them that I would just like to go through, just so people in the audience can really understand who we're speaking to, understand that we've selected these guest speakers for a reason. So Phiona, first of all, they're just people who understand music fundamentally, and they understand how it can kind of connect people from different cultures, even connect people within the same culture in a very, very unique and different way. So she, especially when it comes to music, has sort of been very in touch with trends and with youth culture. And if you know anything about the music that's out right now, you know that the young sound is very, very, very different. And it's led people to say things like hip hop is dead, and that can start a whole conversation. But what I will say though is that you know that the sound that you're hearing is obviously a very, very new type of sound, and it's very relevant to their culture, right? So Phiona is someone who has her eyes on trends, on the youth culture, and she also has had experience working with some very influential media and music entities such as Afripop, The Fader, and Apple as well. And she is a Ugandan music professional, and this was important to us because you can talk about Africa and just exclude other African countries. I think it's important that Phiona can speak into her own experience with Ugandan music, and then now working with Spotify, Sub-Saharan Africa. That's not just one country; that is a bunch of countries in that region, and she's really passionate about putting fresh new talent onto the world's radar, which again is very important for new artists who are looking for that publicity, but may not know the best way to go about it. If Phiona hears it, she's gonna put it, on the map. So we're really excited to have her here. We're really excited that she's passionate about helping young and upcoming artists in the music game. M.I, Jude, even though most people know you as M.I, yes, but we know M.I because, first of all, M.I boldly represents Jos, J-Town, and you know that obviously is very influential to his music. So, I know how important it is to hear that sound, to hear someone bigging up where they're from, because you can tell that place had a big influence on them. He was born in Plateau State, experimented in music for, just from high school, and his biggest influences, which obviously say a lot about his style, speaks a lot about why he's into music, rappers like Jay-Z and DMX. Two rappers with obviously very different sounds, but you can't be a genius rapper and not be into different sounds, So of course, I have so much to, So. Excuse me. So, but outside of music, M.I is also known for his commitment to innovation in producing and marketing music and showcasing young talent. Newsflash, if you did not know, his M12 album remains Nigeria's best-selling hip hop album, and that says a lot about his skill, about his ability, about his understanding of music and how it can connect with his audience, with different listeners. So we're really, 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 really excited to have the two of you here. Thank you for joining us. And we're going to jump right in now. And I'll start with Phiona first and just ask you to just tell us some of the challenges Spotify faced or may have faced with building, in terms of building for the African market, the African music market, which is very diverse? What were some of those challenges?
Absolutely. Some of them challenges that are universal, some of them challenges that are in fact actually opportunities is what I would say. But the basic and the most obvious ones are things like piracy. Piracy comes from a place of society wanting to enjoy art or music or culture, but not having a proportionate willingness to pay for it. And so, what we are doing at Spotify, or what we have attempted to do ever since we were launched over a decade ago, was to just combat that, first of all, because I don't know, I mean, some of you are too young to remember this. I know you're not. These are the days of CDs. And there was a time when the music industry went through an absolute devastation. There was a time when we completely forwent the idea of actually making money from music, from selling music. And I think slowly over the years, like in the 10 or more than 10 years that we've been around, we've kind of slowly started to turn things back around to a place where in our more mature markets, like for example, in the Nordics, like we're back in a very healthy place where people are paying for music, and the industry is in a profitable place once again. So I think that's an initial challenge, is just kind of combating that almost entitlement that music should be free, and it really shouldn't. Because one of the things that I like to tell people is, especially what we've learned in 2020, is that one of the things that really got us through the darkest year that any one of us has ever experienced in our lifetime was music. So hopefully we can start to see us as a society giving art and music its due credit, and that means putting your money where your mouth is and actually paying artists and musicians. So that's one. And then the other is, of course, data. As you mentioned in the slide earlier, like it's very disparate. The digital divide in Africa is especially steep. That was really interesting. I didn't know that it was so different for like what the average user pays in Tanzania, what the average user pays in Malawi for a gig of data. So that's something that's been incredibly, and it's not gone away. Like we're still continuing to kind of wrap our heads around it. But we at Spotify, we believe in innovation, and we have considered a lot of these localized contexts. And for that specific issue, for example, in terms of data, we have Spotify Lite, which, if you don't know, it's a small version. It's a lighter version of the main app of Spotify, exactly the same experience, but then it's just optimized for Androids, which are not necessarily the most high-end ones, and it just requires maybe 10 MBs in order for you to download it, and then you're good to go, and you're able to do the same things. You can search, you can play music, you can share it, all of the things that you can do on the main app, but it just requires less bandwidth for you to be able to do it.
Yeah, I think it's great that Spotify even considers that, the data issue is a really big one here. And a lighter version of an app that Africans want to experience makes a lot of sense. It's the right fit for the market. So thank you for sharing that. Can you speak about some of the user trends on the continent that inspired the expansion? What were you guys seeing from your end about the way Africans across the continent were relating with the app and consuming music?
So a few. One of them, and I think the first one is the one that everyone is quite aware of at this point. I know that Africa to the world has become almost a cliche expression, but it's very much been a theme, a dominant theme in the last, again, 10 years or so. The increased consumption and the increased popularity of African music, and we're seeing an adoption of the culture into mainstream pop. All of this stuff is again, it lets you know that not only are the users in South Africa or in Africa interested in their own cultures, but they're interested in the rest of the world, right? And the rest of the world is interested in what is happening in Africa. On an incremental level. So that's one of the issues, one of the factors. The other is just the fact that, you know, Africa is home to some of the youngest youth populations, right? And what that means is that by 2025, say, we're going to see something like maybe 500 million mobile internet users, right? And a lot of these ones, these are going to be users that are going to be for the first time coming online, using smartphones or you know, just being generally quite hip to technology. So what we have already is a huge and incredible opportunity in terms of an addressable market that is rooted in young people. And as we know, young people are what drive culture, they're what drive music consumption, they're what drive trends and tradition. And so those were just some of the things that let us know that, okay, of everywhere else in the world, and you know, we continue to want to be everywhere. That's a huge part of our mission. We want to be ubiquitous, but we definitely felt that with all of those factors in mind, now was the time to come into the continent.
Thank you so much for that. I'm glad that you brought up the youth population, and because it's a perfect segue into one of the questions that we have for MI, which is, what are some of the effective ways for growing Africa's young music talent that haven't been explored yet, right? Given, and Phiona is right, Africa does have one of the youngest youth population, and those numbers are going to keep increasing, right? So how do we then, you know, MI, from your perspective, how do we then find these new young artists and how do we grow them?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And maybe the way I would like to answer it is, first of all, for us to have a conversation as the Africans in the room. So with Phiona, not just talking to Spotify, but our Ugandan sister and the Nigerians that are here, and just have a conversation about where we are as a continent and how the structures that are in power and place have so often frustrated growth of any kind. Right, we've seen it with the tech industry, but the tech industry, where we've seen it in Nigeria recently, has been an aggressive stance from government. Just even the passiveness of government around conversations around intellectual property across the continent, not just in Nigeria, but across the continent, has been devastating to our industry, right? And maybe that's one of the things that young people have to start thinking about, that our creative economy gets better as our countries get better, as our governance get better. And that's the thing that everybody, I mean, all the people that are on here, all the people at TechCabal, myself, Phiona, at our platforms, that's one of the things we have to remember, is that in our own ways, we have to stay political, because we are literally throwing money away with this sort of like structures that are in place. Apart from that, I would say that the young people can then give themselves a pat on the back. Like, it's amazing. I was talking about how we're celebrating like Phiona and Osage and Temi, like, and all these women that are doing amazing things. There's I just saw a graphic. I mean, sorry to go into a tech, but I just saw a graphic about how like female entrepreneurs had raised $206 million or something this year as compared to the male entrepreneurs, and we're actually doing a great job. When I look at the landscape, right? So in 2009, might have been 10, when I was nominated for a BET, I was talking about this after Burna won the Grammy. I was like, I remember sitting in the States and being like, this is too hard. Like, for an African artist to break in, like, it's just too hard. And coming back on the flight home and just being like, and now we have record labels. You think about Burna Boy, you think about Aristocrats, and you think about Bookie PR. And so there's all these amazing structures globally that have supported him, but it has started with the work that's been done by young Africans here. And we need to continue to grow that. That's why it's so exciting to see, you know, to see a face that looks like ours, someone that has worked in the music business, someone that has been here, has been on calls, has put artists on streams, has been part of marketing campaigns. It's so exciting to see people like that in those in those roles, and we need to continue to amplify that, to celebrate our own, to continue to show that we have the right people when you put our people in these roles. And then I think a lot of the other part of the conversation is just about continuing to grow systems and structure. The big labels that are doing it have to continue. I was thinking, sorry, I know I've been talking for a bit, but let me wrap it up by saying I was thinking about the percentage of artists today who are like global superstars who came through a label. So you think about Wiz, Burna, David, I guess in some way started his own label, so he might be the anomaly. But Fireboy, whoever you call, right? There was somebody that was already in the industry that said, I'm going to put some money and some structure to giving you a platform. And that system is starting to work, right? And so we're gradually starting to see more managers, more A&Rs, more writers. You know, speaking of Davido, we're talking about the impact he had by making songwriters a thing, right? We just need to see more of that from ourselves as we stay political, and we try to make sure that we change the big blocks that need changing. I mean, the Spotifys and other DSPs will tell you the journey that they have to have just from a political standpoint to get into countries, right? That's a complete journey. If we stay political and keep pushing and then continue to act within our ecosystem to bring young talent on, to build systems and continue to invest in entertainment, I think that we'll be headed in the right direction.
Yeah, that's a great response. So platforms, amplification, having the right type of music or executive mentorship that is needed. And I'm glad that you brought up your experience at the BET, which I'm sure for African artists now in this decade is vastly different from what it must have been like for you, what BET even meant to an African artist back then. You know, obviously very, very different. But now we're seeing Burna with the Grammy, and we obviously can't forget, what's his name? Nice mentioned it in a song about bringing home a Grammy. And at that time, Nigerians maybe just thought that's the chances of that happening. But now I think Burna Boy has now made it clear that absolutely it is, right? So the issue no longer is can talented African artists win Grammys? The question now is, how do we grow them and build them to get to that point where they possibly could bring home these big awards, And, so Emma, I want to ask you another question before I throw one to Phiona. What did you learn about the industry back then, and maybe even now, that you would love to tell to newcomers in the game, right? Because now with how technology is and the digital decade, a lot of newcomers are not that eager to sign to labels anymore, right? Because they've seen their peers succeed at launching albums on their own without any label backing them, right? But at the same time, we believe in structure. We believe in putting the right systems in place. So what would you say to them? What lessons did you learn then? What lessons have you even learned now? Because you did say that you're learning. What would you say to them? What would you tell them about either making it here or even expanding to reach global audiences?
Yeah, I mean, so I use the phrase label like sort of colloquially, right? What you really want is a system that will help. So whether it's a publishing contract with someone in the UK, right, which is accessible now for younger artists, so they can skip sort of that Nigerian step of signing to an EME or a Aristocrat, but then get some sort of system or some enabler somewhere else, right? Or whether it's signing to somebody here like a Maven, who have an incredible academy program, which I was just learning about recently. They're sourcing for young talent and developing them before they release them. I think that having that in the ecosystem makes all the difference. So I remember like my first meeting with Odunsi like a long time ago. And he was just like, look, I'm an artist, I'm not a Nigerian artist. And it just blew my mind to hear this young guy. He's 19 years old at the time. I mean, fiercely confident, ready to take over the world. But I would say he would still need, the system somewhere else, right? And that's why it's so exciting to see what innovation does, right? You have DSPs, and I know Spotify where ahead of the curve with this, that act basically as labels, right? They tell a young artist, hey, you don't need to cut through so much red tape. Come to us and we'll help you put your music up directly. We'll help you We'll give you some data so you know who's listening to your music. We'll help you know where to market. We'll connect you, and we'll sort of make the job easier for you. Those systems mean the world to a creative who's in Lagos, a 17-year-old kid who's in Lagos that doesn't know what to do. At the end of the year, when people get their little card and they put up to show the streams, and you can see year after year the growth that they've done, those things make a world of difference for people to know I do have a path to success that I can see from just being a young artist. In terms of the big lessons I would have learned, I think it's again about building those systems. I think for me that was the hardest thing. It was knowing that there was like an ocean between what was happening here. I mean, I would go and perform to 100,000 people in Sapele and Abuja and Port Harcourt, but I couldn't find, there was no data about how those people consume that music, because that data was all like eaten away by piracy. And now when you have systems like, I mean, most of the streaming information when early on was coming from the diaspora, but gradually as DSPs start to be more, start to land here and hire our own people and put them in positions of leadership, and it becomes easier for people to load the Spotifys on their phone and be able to stream, we're going to see the difference that makes. It's going to affect us ways. Number that you are with every day in Lagos, they're going to enter your pocket as they stream, right? But also that data in terms of who likes what. Think about the fact that the numbers that Phiona was talking about aren't yet represented in the DSPs. Think about what happens when there are 500 million Africans who have always listened to African music, but now they can stand up and be counted data-wise, right? And that money is going to be able to be channeled back. And so it's optimistic. The future is very, very bright for Africa. As long as we continue to build systems, we continue to have platforms like this where we can listen to each other. And I'll say one more thing to young artists is, pay attention early on when people share new ideas to you. I remember when people were talking about streaming and playlists, and you'd be like, yeah, I just want my CRBT money right now. I just want to sign that deal. And I've been a victim of acting too late and seeing like younger generation that are up on the new trends in technology, come in and seize and grow a new market. So pay attention, stay aware of what's happening. Technology is going to be the English or the language of the future, and innovation is going to be, the way we communicate. So pay attention.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Trends, having foresight and understanding that technology is the foundation now, and it will be in the coming future. I don't think that that's going to change. So important for music, people who are interested in music, working in the music industry, who are tuned in now, to just have that in mind. Keep that in mind. Keep that in the back of your head. So Phiona, I'll move to you and just ask, based on what MI has said about trends, innovation, and all of that, what excites Spotify for where Africa is concerned and African music? What excites Spotify the most, and in what ways is Spotify using technology, using data to either target new artists, target new listeners on the continent, and bring even more of them onto their platform?
Fantastic question. I'm so glad you're talking about creators, because what excites Spotify the most, the heart of everything that we do starts with what the creators are doing, right? So we cannot have a service if we do not have the people that make the music. And if the people that make the music are not empowered, then they cannot have an economy that sustains what it is that they're doing. At Spotify, we have an app called Spotify for Artists, okay? And with that app, you're able to look at your analytics. You're able to see where it is that your songs are popular. You're able to see, where you should potentially maybe go on tour based on that kind of information, who you should maybe collaborate with. If you're MI is, I don't know, popping in Brazil at some point, maybe this is time to pick up a collaboration with a Brazilian disco funk artist. I don't know, something like that. And also, the other thing that we do is the other thing that you have access to, like whenever you release music, you're able to see, this song had this many skips, or it had this many plays, it's in these many playlists. So you're able to see, using cold hard data, how well you're doing. You're able to see where you can improve. You can see where things aren't working. So I think that is good. That's a game changer. And we've been very, very adamant about transparency for our creator community. And I feel like that's going to be one of the things that's going to really help artists, especially in Africa, where you're quite aware of this, like coming by data, which applies to things like the arts and music, is not always the easiest thing to find. You can't always rely on radio chart data, because sometimes those numbers just don't, they don't come from a very objective place. So I think that the most important thing that we are working on now is just improving the tools that empower the creators. We have similar for podcast creators, so you can on the back end see like how it is that you're performing, but most of all, that's the use of that's how we're using technology to empower our artist community.
That's great. I really like what you said about the Spotify for Artists app, how it gives them cold hard data, right? So I mean, 10 years ago, you would not have been able to know how many times people skipped your songs, or how many times it was played, or even a location, and what you said about collaboration as well. So if my song pops up in Brazil, do I then have an opportunity to go, even within that Spotify for Artists app, find other artists who are playing around with different genres and finding ways to partner with them? So that data is so important, especially with the way music is being consumed now. So my next question is about segmentation. So, when we spoke yesterday, I'd mentioned that music in different African countries sound very differently. South Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, Kenyan music, all very different. How is Spotify able to segment their communications, the way they even recommend artists or playlists, even when they put African music together within a playlist? How is that done? How are they even able to say, okay, this is this sound, this is that sound, this is how we're going to target people then?
Great question again. And again, one of the ways that we do that is data. So we are able to see songs that are being searched for on the platform, songs that are being saved, songs that are being skipped, songs, and that is directly attributable even down to a town, a city, a country, this kind of thing. So hard data is very much a part of the curation game. We also have, and I'm never ever embarrassed to brag about this, but Spotify is renowned for its artificial intelligence. We, ever since we came into this industry, what we've been perfecting is the way that music is personalized, right? At the moment, there's like, how do I put it? There's like 345 million different Spotify user experiences. And how that happens is that anytime you open that app, from the minute you start to opt in, and the minute you say, okay, I like Afro beats, I also like a little bit of funk, give me some R&B, all of this. So that at the very beginning, then you get served up a certain set of playlists. And then as you continue to use the app reads your tastes, understands what time of the day you listen to music. And in all these kinds of little big data, we use that to then create, personalized playlists, right? But on the other side of it, we also have editorial, and we mean editors who are actual human beings that are experts or that are leaders in their fields, in their different regions where we are live. And what they do is they combine all of these different superpowers. So we present to the listener hopefully the best combination of editorial playlists, editorially chosen music, and also artificially, AI selected music, so personalized music, music which will have come to you served up based on your tastes and your habits. And so the way that your experience is determined is that it's a combination of our own our hands, but it's also you dictate what it is that you want to see time and time again. So if somebody, for example, says, oh, I like MI, and then the app will then start to recommend, oh, if you like MI, you will maybe like Jay-Z, and you will maybe like, I don't know, you said DMX, right? You like DMX, MI, this kind of thing. So it's a combination. Hopefully, as time goes on, it just becomes more and more intuitive on the listener's journey.
Okay, thank you so much. I love that Spotify is very, very unashamed about saying that they use AI, and I know that it's a fan favorite, and I know that it's important that customers on the other end I think it's important for them to know that, okay, Spotify is understanding my taste and recommending music that they believe I will like. And if somebody chooses Afrobeats and Spotify is recommending a new African artist, that's going to make a world of difference for how our music is consumed both in Africa and even in a global audience as well. So we're really, really glad to hear this. And then I also want to bring up something that you said and then segue into my next question, which is about editors who work at Spotify, who understand the market, who understand the music. Does Spotify have plans to open local offices in the different African markets they're in, or maybe in major African cities or hubs within the continent?
So one thing is, we've been through a pandemic. We're still going through one, which has somehow coincided with all of our amazing plans that we're rolling out right now. What we're doing, so to answer your question, the most important thing, first of all, is the expertise and the localized expertise. So we make sure that our editors are leaders in their community, in the genres that they represent, and that's first and foremost. But in terms of actual geographic location, as we kind of navigate working in this new dispensation, what Spotify is moving towards is what we call working from anywhere, and we call that a distributed working mentality. And what that is our Spotify employees, our staff, we can opt to work anywhere in the world. Okay. And what we do is we just make it easier for them to be able to do that. So for a period of 12 months, you can opt in and say, okay, so I want to be based in Johannesburg for this year and be able to do my work there. And what that we're finding now is that, and you see, these are things that we would have never, ever come across if COVID hadn't happened, but like we've been kind of forced into this, and it's almost a silver lining, because what that's going to do is it's going to give us flexibility. It's going to help us make sure that the people who work at Spotify are in the best possible conditions, but it's also going to not restrict the talent pool, because we want to be able to work with as diverse a talent pool as possible. And sometimes, borders make that harder than what it should be. Whereas if we, with this now new, what we call again, distributed working, we're able to be like, okay, she's in Lagos, but she's doing her thing and she's comfortable and she's able to just kind of carry on with the job. So that's kind of where it's a delicate balance of, where we can be or what we can do given all of the restraints, but we're certainly looking into, and we want to be able to have a long-term presence in every single territory where we are in the future. So yeah.
Thank you for that, Phiona. I'm going to throw a question at M.I. Actually, this question was sent in for the both of you, but I'll ask M.I to start first. And the question is, how can we bring more local stars to superstar status? And I want to give context here because using three, I guess our big three from Nigeria, Wizkid, Davido, and Burna Boy. Burna winning the Grammy, winning Best Album, right? And Davido being in the Coming to America 2 movie, not as an actor, but as an artist, performing his music. And then Wizkid being on interviews on Apple Music, speaking to Ebro, these New York City music legends who are interviewing a Nigerian artist born and raised in Nigeria. When I was in New York years ago, that was not a thing that, if you wanted to hear African music, you would have to go to a Nigerian restaurant, you have to go to an African themed party thrown by Africans, Nigerians, Ghanaians, whatever. But now you can go to the US and turn on any rap or hip hop music station, and there's a chance you're either going to hear one of them, So obviously that is high superstar status, right? And I know that a lot of local young artists are thinking either we're getting there or somewhere close enough, but how do we then groom them? What needs to go into getting them from local upcoming to superstars, like in whatever capacity?
Man, that's a good question. I would like to answer maybe the really important part of the question, which is about artists being able to make revenue and revenue that they can survive and thrive off of through these platforms. And I think that if you look at three of those artists, you'd see that they were very deliberate with their collaborations early on. They were very deliberate to speak to new communities and collaborate with artists from different parts of the world. I think what's so exciting about when we talk about the data that you can get through, Spotify and the DSPs is it can tell you where people are listening to your music. And for a young artist, you could just find a local artist in those communities and collaborate with them and share markets and share communities. This sort of superstardom that a Wizkid or a Burna Boy, there's so much that goes into it. And a lot of it is just innate to them, right? Some of it is how they look, some of it is how they stand. It's like all these variables that you can't control. But if you look at the wide spectrum of artists that are out there, and you think about someone like it's not SZA, Sia, who for a long time we didn't even know. I don't know if we know what she looks like now, but we didn't even know who she was, or her, who on the come up, there was a part of her career where no one even she would just post music, and there's another artist called Him that would come. There's all sorts of ways for an artist to be, or a Maxwell that will come and put out an album and then disappear. And I know that maybe the younger people don't know who Maxwell is, but he would just disappear into the ethos and be gone. Or Kendrick Lamar, be gone and come back. There's so many ways, and chasing this a perception may not be the right way. It's about building your fan base and building your listenership to the point where Mr. Easy was leading stream numbers for a long time, and he lives a sort of different life from the real glamorous So for artists, I would say, hey, build your communities by collaborating. Look at the data. You put out your music, do a proper promotional run, look at the data, see where people are looking at your music, find someone in that area. Look at the artists that the AI is telling you sound like, and reach out to them and collaborate and build audiences that way. And I just wanted to also say one thing here. This is a shooting shot at Phiona to say that there's a lot of questions here about rights and stuff like that. And it would be interesting, Phiona, for to have a conversation here for young artists, just around rights, around how to navigate in the DSP spaces, around what to look for when they're looking at the data. Because I do know that Lagos forces artists into acting sometimes before they even realize what they're doing, and people sign their first contracts and they don't know what's happening. And it could be great for Spotify to lead, a conversation, a one-day conversation on that. And, holla at your boy, when you're ready.
Definitely. I mean, Phiona, I was going to call on you to answer the royalties questions, because a few of them have come into the Q&A section of our conversation.
Sure. I'll first kind of tail off what M.I was talking about, just in terms of that evolution of a new artist. So education is very much a big part of what I do in my role at Spotify. And you never stop learning. There's always going to be something to learn. Being a new artist, the best thing you can do, I would say, will always be to empower yourself with knowledge. And knowledge from our end comes in the form of the data that you're going to have at your fingertips. You know what I mean? That's the Bible truth. That will tell you everything that you need to know from a consumer point of view, right? Now, the other thing that we need to know is that we don't make stars, and stars are not made overnight, okay? Stars are born, but we partner with artist communities to achieve their highest potential as soon as they possibly can. And that's kind of what I've been doing. I have a huge passion for new artists. And at Spotify, we have a program called Radar. And what Radar does is it's like it's an accelerator program in a way. So we cherry pick, you know, based on what the buzzing new artists are looking like. And we kind of, so I'll give you an example. We had our very first Radar artist was a young rapper called Willie Cardiac in South Africa, still growing, still developing. And then a second one was a singer called Elaine. She's now signed to RCA. We only just kind of partnered with her kind of early last year. And and what we did was we did a marketing campaign with her. And we do things like, just showing you how the tools work on Spotify, and just giving you, like, supercharging the visibility on the platform. We definitely do that. We've done a similar thing with Thames, who you're all familiar with, and currently are running something with Focalistic, who maybe 7 months ago was not so very well known in South Africa. And now, he's pretty much the hero of a campaign that we just launched 2 weeks ago. And that is a direct result of that program that we're working with, where we see potential, where we see, music taking off in a certain direction, and we follow where it goes organically. We never force anything, but it's just, we are always on the lookout. And we're always mindful with new artists who we know are typically vulnerable. They can often be marginalized, and they don't always have the best shot. So we're mindful of that. And we have those programs in place just to make sure that we even things out. And so that in 5-10 years from now, we will know who the next Burna Boy and the next Davido and the next I believe they're even here now as we speak. And it's important for us to churn those things over. And that's the thing about the digital economy. When we were still in physical, it was also possible for us to only have a certain number of artists at a given time, and that was it. So what's happening now in the streaming economy is things are much more democratized. If I should tell you the amount of artists, even from Nigeria, who are right now signed to major labels, you'll see the announcements throughout the year. It's astonishing. It's crazy. And what's happening is people are discovering, which is another tenet of Spotify. Discovery is very much the cornerstone of what it is that we do. So that means that we are artist cycle and artist age agnostic. If Focalistic, or if Thames, or if Davido, doesn't matter. If you have a hot song, and if we know that there is traction there, first of all, the editorial is going to make sure that you're seen. And as more people consume it, you're going to increase your chances of being discovered alongside Scott Leroy or whoever it is that we are championing in America, in Australia, and wherever else in the world. So that's my take on the new artist piece.
Great. Thank you so much, Phiona. Thank you. M.I, we have a question here. Two questions for you about NFTs and A&R. So there's a question from someone asking, what is the future of NFTs in the African music industry? If you can speak into that.
It's so crazy, right? That I think last year I never had a question in my life about NFTs, and I've had maybe 40 questions this year about NFTs. But for everyone that is out there, please go Google what an NFT is, for every creative out there, and educate yourself. It's all part of, like, the bigger technology that's going to change the world, which is blockchain technology. It's a derivative of that. And I want to make my next album, my next like passion project. So through my career, I've divided my projects into for the market and for me. And my next for me project, which is called A Study on Love, I want to make it an NFT. I'm still figuring out how to do it. I would say for African artists is, don't underestimate your fan base. Don't underestimate how much they love you and what they're prepared to do for you, and lean into that. For me, NFTs are going to be big globally. It's just if African artists are aware of what's happening, aware of the technology, aware of, and then lean into it, right? And did you ask questions? Was it about A&R or something?
Yes, somebody asked, someone asked, by the way, we do have, just shameless plug here, we do have an article on our website about NFTs, so you want to just go on over there. I'm sure somebody from the team will drop the link in the chat box. But the question for you about A&R, MI, is how does one develop themselves as an A&R? Is this, you know, there's some jobs that people do that they learn on the go, and there's some jobs that people do because they're naturally gifted at it. Now, what makes a good A&R? So if what do I need to know? Who do I need to be? What kind of what should I study? Who should I look at? Where do I even begin?
This is a great question. And before I answer, I want to stunt first, so people know who is talking to them. So I consider myself the second greatest A&R in Nigerian music history. I think number one is Don Jazzy, but I think I'm responsible for no, but because I want to establish what it is. People are going to be surprised by my answer, maybe, but I'm responsible for Jesse Jacks, Ice Prince, Brymo, Dice, Coker, Millie, CK, Black Bones, Victoria Kimani. Like through my career, I've found talent, young, brought them to the record label, been part of that journey. And my answer absolutely across the board is find an artist and serve. That is the answer. Every artist is going to be different. As an A&R, sometimes it's going to be about connecting them to a producer. Sometimes it's going to be about making them comfortable in the studio so that they can create. Sometimes it's going to be about helping them find a hit record, right? Sometimes it's going to be about the fact that they're stressed at home and they just need someone to help them figure out their rent situation, payments time, so that they can find the peace of mind. Especially in Nigeria, with the myriad of experiences and situations people live in, I think the absolute job for our Nigerian artists is for someone that comes ready to give to the artist and comes prepared to be part of that artist journey. Technology has made it so that people can create music with a laptop in a corner of a room, in a bathroom, anywhere. But when you show up, I see mistakes a lot of times where people want to come and dictate to an artist. And I think that the real job is to serve. I remember early on in Brymo's career, up until then, it had been at Chocolate City, we'd had our producers make all the music. And I came to the studio and sat down in front of him and I was like, oh yeah, so I have some beats I've made. Let me just pull up one for you. And he was just sitting down and he said, no, I don't want to work with any producer at Chocolate City. And I turned and this is a battle between my ego and, you know, who are we shutting up this beat? And I listened to him and he said, no, I want to work with the producer that I came up with, this guy called Mickey Me. Even after he's left Chocolate City, all this amazing music that Brymo has made, he's made with Mickey Me. So he knew something that I didn't know. And when I signed him, my job was to just position him and his friend to be able to be comfortable in a place where they could make music together. That was the job. I didn't need to tell him how to write a hook, how to, you know, I mean, that was the job at the time. And I think that that's the best thing you can do. Find a young artist if you're very interested. Find a young artist, tell them, hey, I'm here to help. They'll start out be like, hey, let me go and buy food or whatever. And then as you, over time, you start to get a rhythm and you start to be like, okay, this is generally what this artist needs. And you take that experience and be able to apply to someone else and someone else and someone else and go from there.
That's great. Thank you so much, MI. Phiona, that question was also directed at you, the A&R question. I don't know if you have anything else to add or if MI covered it.
I think MI covered it. I mean, I'm certainly not an expert in terms of A&R, but I'm just really happy to hear that there are still, because you know, you often hear in the industry that A&R is dead. Everybody just goes to YouTube to find their next star or whatever. And that does happen a lot, but I'm just very encouraged to hear that there are still people in this industry that take the time to sit with the artists and apply something that is human to what their process is and contribute to their success. That's awesome.
Thank you so much. So we're going to take some questions from the Q&A chat box. So there's one that's really interesting here from Justin Norman. He says, Spotify is super focused globally on podcasts. What about on the continent? Do you have your eyes on the podcast market here? I can already tell you for free that one of the best podcasts coming out of Nigeria is I Said What I Said, Feikemi and Jola. You know, so clearly, I mean, they are listened to, well liked, you know, so with people like Jola and FK, and of course there are other podcasters on the continent, what's the plan there? Because I would also love to know that as well.
Sure. And that's my favorite podcast, by the way. I Said What I Said, my favorite podcast ever right now. So Spotify, our mission is audio first, okay? Our only thing is to create the best audio experience for every user in the world. That's what we do. So obviously we've been leaders in the music space, and now rightly pointed out, podcasting has started to take its shape. We've just come into the market, and I think what's important to do is to roll out with strategy. So of course, the simple answer is we have very many plans for the podcast space. And I think that what's going to be wise is for us to stagger our learnings. We've only been live for a month. So we're not going to be able to mirror exactly the same thing as what you're maybe seeing in America or the UK or all of the more mature markets. However, the early indicators are that the demand over here in Africa is huge. And I mean, we have the affinity. We are a continent that has been raised on radio and talk radio and all of these things. So we kind of very naturally can transition into that as a complete ecosystem. So that's coming. Everything is going to happen. It's just that now it's time and timing and when everything falls into place.
Thank you so much for answering that question. We have a question here about seamless payment experiences, because I think a few Nigerians have complained that they haven't been able to use their Naira cards to still pay for Spotify. So someone is asking, how does Spotify intend to make payments seamless for its African users, considering our growing financial structures? But before you answer that, can I just throw it out there and just say that Spotify, when it comes to payments experience, there's not a lot they can do if they are integrated with a payments platform, right? There's a lot of players involved when you're about to do a card transaction on a global site. So, and on one hand, I understand the frustration after that big announcement, and then boom, you can't pay. But at the same time, I want to explain to audience that whatever answer that Spotify gives, just understand that there are multiple players when it comes to a seamless payment experience.
That is absolutely right. So you're fully aware. It's one of the things that we were considering when we were coming into the market, because we know that it's not only us that have experienced these kinds of issues even in the past. So we are continuing to visit those issues, which we have fully aware of, trust me. But we have kind of gone ahead and done where we can maximize that opportunity. So for example, in Kenya, where it's also a largely unbanked society, and where M-Pesa, which is a mobile payment service, that is a payment option for us in Kenya. And we've seen amazing results for that. Kenya is growing incredibly well for us. So I think that when we get the opportunities to do those things, which we do, we absolutely have the intention and the plans to do, we're able to localize everything from what you're doing in editorial to how you are paying for it. All of that is definitely part of our consideration. So with apologies and with hope, I mean, we are working on this tirelessly. These are the teething things that we anticipated. I mean, you're not going to ever land in Africa and everything is going to go perfectly well. We're not experts, and we're working with the ecosystem. So we have partners here. We're not doing this in a silo. We have, people in the regulatory services and finances and telcos, everybody that is invested in this part of music, which is the business side of music. We're definitely continually working to make sure that we can arrive at a place where, because we believe that music really should be accessible to everybody, wherever you are. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. So we'll be patient. We're going to be patient. We're going to try. So there's a question that I want to throw at the both of you, and it's from Shola. He's asking, from a tech/creative sector perspective, how can we ensure this new scramble for Africa doesn't end up with Africa being exploited again? I guess this is a very heavy question, but yeah.
So, the only way that I would say that exploitation is an issue is in terms of, and this is a question you wanted to bring up anyway, so I'll put it out there now, is, if artists aren't being paid from their work, that for me is that's the exploitation that would be most pertinent to us. Okay. And for us at Spotify, we pay royalties to our to our partners, to our rights holder partners. So all of the publishers, all of the labels, all of the distributors, that's who we pay the money to. And then based on their relationship with the artist that they sign, they then pay out however which way. So for us, we're focused on making sure that there are transparent processes in place. You're able to see what your streams are. You're able to somehow kind of establish like what it is that you should be due. And if you have a correct label or correct distributor, then you should be receiving the money that is due to you. So for me, speaking objectively, because when you talk about exploitation, that's quite a broad, even though I understand what he's saying, it's quite broad, and we could be here all day talking about that. But also just in terms of, again, I mentioned the fact that we are embedded in the communities that we represent. Okay, we would never, everyone that curates the music is actually from where it is that they're curating the music. So there is no how do I put it? There is no undue misuse of the music. Like, we're making sure that the music is representative of where it is that we come from, and we're making sure that creators are adequately compensated. And for me, I think that is one of the first ways that you're making sure that there is no exploitation going. There's a fair transaction going on between ourselves and rights holders and artists, etc.
Thank you so much for that response. M.I, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think Phiona has spoken to I mean, within our system, the challenges that we have there. But from a macro level, I mean, this is why I started out earlier saying we have to be politically, conscious, because the truth about it is that the majority of the funding within our creative economies now is not coming from within. Our billionaires, our investors here are generally going to invest in Dubai and invest in other parts of the world, and we're behind in that regard. So it's good to see young people in tech and creative economies they're making money and turning it back around. You know what I mean? Whether it's building a studio or signing an artist or whatever, it's good to see that, because that question is a question for Africans to answer for ourselves. You know what I mean? The world has opened up now. People want to do business. They want to do business as fairly as possible. And sometimes, even with the best intentions, someone will put themselves in a situation where, by infighting or a lack of communication or lack of information, they will allow themselves to be taken advantage of. And I think that's why it's important. I mean, I think it was Phiona that spoke about arming ourselves with information, right? We need to educate ourselves and speak together. And, as I did a TEDx talk where I was talking about the fact that our industry doesn't even, Lagos has a small ecosystem of people that are in the business of music, but we don't even communicate all the time. You know what I mean? And I mean, to use a very, very dark analogy, right? When you go back to when slavery would have started thousands of centuries, few centuries ago, actually, it's thousands of years, hundreds of years. But anyway, to use that analogy, like, we have this concept called Ubuntu, and we know what Ubuntu is. And imagine if Ubuntu was spread out across the continent, like, slavery in its present form couldn't have happened in Africa if we, all Africans, were aware that we are to be our brother's keepers, right? And so as we head now forward, as the world opens up and people are doing more business and economies are competing and businesses are competing, if there is sort of like maybe not an intricate, but a general Pan-African agenda for who Africans want to be and how we want to do business. And across the continent, we know what we're asking for and the seats at the table, we're making sure that we're being represented properly. We're making sure that our communities are being invested in. When platforms arrive, we're asking them, the governments are asking, hey, how much of this is going to be domiciled back home? How much of this investment is going to go back home? Then we're in a better place not to be taken advantage of. But if we continue the way we are, what is going to happen is that osmosis is just naturally going to happen. And most of the creatives are going to start out here and leave, and a lot of the money is going to leave, and we're going to be back in the position that we are, and it would be by no intent of maybe some organizations to harm Africans, but by the fact that we are not, and I think I've covered the question as best as I can.
Yeah.
Thank you. And what you said about the fact that, sorry, before I just say anything, we've launched a poll. So please, if you see it on your screen, please answer the questions. It's just 4 questions in the poll. But Emma, I just wanted to say about your comment where you mentioned the fact that there's such a small ecosystem of people in the music industry, but you guys don't relate. And you had mentioned earlier about, an event. So again, we're just going to shamelessly plug ourselves here and say that M.I, Phiona, Spotify, Chocolate City, everybody join. TechCabal will happily curate that event, because you definitely have a point. Everyone should be talking to each other so that we do not repeat a cycle that really harmed us X amount of years ago. And we know how valuable African music is now. In this age, in this culture, we cannot deny it. So it would be unfair for the people in this ecosystem, in the music ecosystem in Nigeria, in Lagos, in Africa, to be so divided when we could really do a lot if we came together, especially being led by people who have had experience in the game. Yeah. Emma, you're on mute.
I have a question. I wanted to interrupt. So I mean, I know a lot of people that follow get upset with me when I talk about, like, as a man, I talk about, being a feminist and stuff like that. But I think it's important. I wanted to ask Phiona, for someone that's operated at the highest levels, I wanted to ask her, what is it that as men we can learn about, what is it about your experience that you can share towards the men that are here about how we can be better in the ecosystems? Because when I see people like you that have made it there, I know that there's so much experience, and I personally would like to hear if you have an anecdote or something to share about that. I don't have an instantaneous, like a fix all. I really appreciate the question though. And I think that the fact that you're asking, this doesn't happen, you know what I mean? Ask the woman in the room and actually listen. Like, listening is, you would be amazed how often I've been quite fortunate, even though, yes, being a woman, it's not, and in a male dominated space. And, I used to do what you do, A&R and all of this kind of, and it's very much, and it's a boys' club, but I feel like it's also a bit of a new day that we're in. And we're seeing more women being that much more visible. And that is because the people in power, which are the men, are also kind of seeing the sense in that, like, it's not going to happen with us in the same way. Like, if we talk about things like racism, right? For example, like, majority or minority groups can never be the ones that topple racism. Like, for that to happen, the ones that have historically had the power need to then, address themselves, look at what it is that they do that creates this system of inequality, and be brave and bold and honest enough to address that. The same thing happens in the gender discussion. We have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Somebody said this recently this week, and I can't remember who. Someone, Lavi Ajayi.
Yeah. She has a talk which is like about literally about that, being comfortable, about being uncomfortable. Like you gotta put aside that thing and just know that, you know, we've not let you down once, Black women, you know, so why would you not allow for a different, like a more diverse leadership to happen, and improve just the state of the world. So it's about listening is what I would say in short.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Phiona. Let's speak about local talent in terms of Spotify's, you know, their growth in Africa. You know, I know you mentioned that, you know, we're in a pandemic, so obviously we're not thinking, okay, right away Spotify is going to set up offices. But in terms of hiring local A&Rs, hiring people who are in the music industries across different countries, across the continent, what does that look like? And M.I, in your own opinion, what do you think if Spotify were to do that call out? Okay, we're looking for people to join our team, specifically people who understand music or love music on the continent. Who would you recommend they speak to first? You know, who should they like look out for? You know, yeah. So Phiona, you can start with you know, what does hiring local talent look like for Spotify in Africa, and then M.I.
Okay, so I should make it clear that we're not a label. Okay, so it was not. I don't think there's going to be any call outs anytime for an A&R, but as I said earlier, I mean, the teams that we already have in place and that are expanding are local talents, okay, in terms of editorial, especially where it matters, where you've got to be able to translate culture. And as I'm sure as the markets expand, because, you know, we're live now in 39 new markets as of the launch, right? We're live now there. And so expanding and responding to demand and all this, I'm very sure that we're going to need more hands on deck. And for me and for us, you know, the first port of call is always going to be home turf, because nobody can champion your home more than you that lives at home, right? So that's the first thing. But you know, I want to leave it at that note, that for us it is important for us to be a local player, and also to be a global player at the same time. We want to be the best local and global partner that every artist, and every label and every consumer, every fan that subscribes to Spotify, we want you guys to rate us as that, you know, to have that right balance of being able to speak the local language, but also to be able to take you guys over the seas and beyond, you get. So that's my answer.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
M.I.
M.I, go ahead, please.
Oh, I was gonna say, I mean, first of all, I think whoever the recruiting team is, when I saw Phiona there, I was like, then Sabi their work. You know what I mean? Like, they know what they're doing. I think for the rest of us, the question isn't like, sometimes we ask questions towards organizations that are really for us, right? I'd say for every young person out there that's a creative, start that idea, be consistent at it, continue to grow get feedback, continue to grow your platform. And eventually somebody that's doing at a bigger level is going to see value in what you're doing and invest in it. I'm a huge fan of podcasts in the States. I know that Spotify had the Joe Budden podcast on it for a while. And I started with the Joe Budden podcast when it started, and to see that growth, like when it was like maybe 1,000 people. And for young creatives, I would say, instead of maybe, and I don't mean to be offensive when I say this, but instead of starting out with a sense of entitlement, like this organization owes me something, it's about realizing that you put yourself in the best situation when you can prove to people before they step in the room what your value is. So if you're a young curator out there, you know what I mean, whether it's on social media, do that and do it to the best of your ability. If you're a young A&R out there, find artists that you can provide value to, do that. And by the time people come knocking on your door, you know, why I smiled when I saw Phiona's name in this role is because I know the value that she's provided. I mean, no gassing. I know the value. I've been on phone calls with her. I know anyone within the music industry will tell you who she is, and that's really the answer. The answer is if you make yourself valuable, people that are looking for value will find you.
I'm gassed though, M.I. Thank you. Hella gassed.
Thank you both so much. So I would like to invite one of our team members. He's a staff writer, senior editor at TechCabal, to ask a question. His name is Edwin, and just for context, Edwin is part of a musical group called the Ignis Brothers. They're super cool. They make all these like cool, vibey music. So the reason I'm giving that context is so you understand why he's asking the question that he's asking. So Edwin, you can go ahead and unmute your mic.
Hey everybody, hi Fiona, hi M.I. Great to be here. So I wanted to ask, now that, directed to Fiona mostly, now that Spotify is coming to, it's in Africa now, I know there were playlists like Afro Indie and there was Pepper and all those things, but I feel like there were more, so to say, nuanced playlists for other countries. Like Sweden, you had like very, there were more, I think the curation was, a bit more tailored to the people living there. So I feel like, is that something the editorial team is looking at with Africa now that the team's here?
Yeah, absolutely. So, when Spotify was founded, 2006 or so, and whenever it was, whoever first streamed in Sweden, I'm pretty sure it wasn't completely tailored to them the day of, you understand?
Yeah.
At the moment, we have about 100 playlists that are tailored for the African market. Okay, that's the beginning. And the thing is, because of the way that we work is like we work on the data that you guys give us. So we're not going to come here and create 50 million playlists of what we think you might like, and then it lands and y'all are like, that's not so great. It takes a while for us to accumulate the data that we need and to continue to refine the offering and make sure that it is indeed what we, what you guys end up with. So I'm 100% certain that by this time next year, there will be another type of African heat. There will be, we have the Alte Cruise playlist.
Yes, definitely. I feel like it increases the chances of what playlist you get into, because I know you allow playlist pitching, like on the Spotify for Artists back end. And so I think more playlists means more chances to be,
more chances to be visible, more chances for you guys to be discovered, and for us also to tell a story that is more than Afro beats. You know what I mean? Like, because that's been a huge driver of the African narrative in music, but it's not the only one. We're seeing what's happening with Amapiano, for example. That's kind of giving another lease of life to where Afrobeats is going. Like those collaborations are incredible, and everyone loves them. And I almost feel like they're bringing Africans together in a way that I really didn't see in the last 5 years or so. Like, I feel like the music cultures are fusing, and we are hoping to continue to be accurate in our representation of that with our playlist offering. But that's a great question. And I hope you can hold us accountable, because that's what we want. We want to be able to do what you want. He says that's the plan. I'm scared. Okay. But yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fiona. I think that your response was just a perfect answer to a question someone asked about the long-term plan for Africa. I think that Africans are really excited about the fact that Spotify is now available in their country. But then there is, I think, a need to be patient and wait for Spotify to really, really get into the market and really understand the market. It's a big job, but we are rooting for you. And I know that a lot of artists are definitely rooting for Spotify, because of the exposure, that being on Spotify's platform can bring to them. So, I mean, I think that in terms of long-term plan, it's definitely we will just, I think, grow with Spotify and see the direction that Spotify is going where Africa is concerned. So we're really, really, really excited for that. So I want to ask a question. We're getting close to the end where we're going to wrap up, but I want to throw in a few more before we let the both of you go. Thank you so much for your time. We really, really appreciate it. So for the both of you, there's a question here
I'm still getting
about.
paid, Abby.
Yeah. Don't say that out loud because people might just come and find us and start asking questions. But so I mean, somebody's asking if it's possible to blossom a tech startup that can help artists get streaming income and revenue. I guess this is a question about partnership in terms of if there was a tech startup that launched to help artists, new African artists, get streaming income and revenues, would there be an opportunity for that type of startup to partner with Spotify Africa, to partner with A&R executives, to partner with labels like M.I's? Is that possible? Is that realistic for now?
So when you say to get royalties, like to physically receive it, or
maybe to help them, I guess, manage how that income comes in from streaming. Yeah, the income and the revenues. Yeah.
You know what? That is actually an ongoing conversation. And like I said, like as we delve deeper into all of the intricacies of like how rights collection happens in Africa, which needs a lot of work. We are so open to partnering with just sturdy and market-based solutions, or people who create those solutions. Partnership is a very strong part of what we do at Spotify. So it's not just and that's on all levels. There's a micro level, like right down to the artists, but also with brands, we do that all the time. With other media, we do that all the time. Even like what we've done with, in terms of payment partnerships, in terms of like how people are paying in Kenya, like that's because of partnerships. So the short answer to that is, of course, like if there's a way for us to make the experience, not just for the fans, but also for the creators, that much better as you engage with Spotify, we're always open to it. And it's just a matter of us being able to have that conversation and stress testing those options and seeing what works. But yeah, we love to partner. Partnership is a cornerstone of what we do.
Great. Thank you. It's great to hear that. M.I, any last words from you?
I mean, just to some of the questions I saw just had me interested to know. I mean, it comes back to what Phiona was talking about earlier about being educated. But in case there are artists out there who have spoken to someone and uploaded their music and are not getting royalties, it's good, to ask questions. I mean, even the last question, it was interesting for me because, I mean, technically, that is what these DSPs do. They sell your music and then they give you money. So if there's a break in transmission somewhere, it might be interesting for you to find out what's happening with your income or your music, just in case. I don't know if it's relevant to anyone here, but I've seen a few questions around that same theme. And you should, if you have music that's online and it's on any of these big DSPs and you're seeing streams happening, you should have revenue coming your way. And maybe the answer is that you've given your rights to someone and that person isn't being honest with you, completely honest with you. So that might be something that, people should look up,
Yeah. Okay.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to add just 2 seconds. In terms of that, again, I just want to make it known that we also have a team that is very involved in they're called the Songwriters Team, and they look after the publisher songwriter aspect. So they're not fan facing, they're not consumer facing, it's more industry facing. And as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be running what we call masterclasses throughout the year in all of the territories that we're live. And this is for creators especially. And so as part of that, we're going to be inviting that team as well to come and talk about like what the different opportunities are for, for publishers, for songwriters, and that aspect. So that might help in that regard in terms of creating an awareness and helping with the education aspect. But yeah, that's all I wanted to add to that.
Great. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time, the time that you took out to answer our questions. There were a lot more questions that people had, but I believe that over time, especially as the market penetration deepened, there will be answers, there'll be responses, there'll be more events, there'll be more fireside chats to really explore Spotify's influence in Africa, after a year, after 2 years, it doesn't really matter. But I know that we're really excited to celebrate wins, to celebrate successes. So thank you to Spotify for this, expanding into Africa expansion plans. It's great. Thank you, MI, for, legitimately being a legend in the game. And I just want to apologize for incorrectly saying the name of your album. I apologize. I've only had 1 cup of coffee today. I met MI too. I really apologize. Please, I'm half asleep. But what you said about, your journey as an AR person, discovering that talent, and then saying, if you really want to bring new artists into the limelight, you've discovered a great sound, be ready to serve. I think that is important. That's an important piece of advice that everyone, whether you're in the music industry or not, should walk away with. Thank you to all our audience members for joining in, for signing up, for sending in your questions. Our next event is next week, Friday. It's April. Sorry, Bolo, can you go back to that slide? Thank you. April 9th, next week, Friday. No, next week, upper week? 2 weeks away, yes. April 9th, add it in your calendar. It will be an exciting conversation. I just want to also shout out the TC team, TC Insights. They put together this event. They are very big on insights. They're very big on data. And we've spoken to 2 people today who understand the power of data. So if you're looking for in-depth insights about technology business in Africa, TC Insights is the place for you to go. And then also TC Daily Newsletter, which goes out every weekday morning at 7 a.m. We basically put together, curate tech news from the Cabal, inside the Cabal, articles that we've written and other articles that we think are interesting, news stories that we think people should pay attention to. You can subscribe. There's a link right there, and you can go on our website and subscribe as well. And the team works really hard to put those newsletters out. We're hoping that we'll have Phiona in there, guest write a newsletter one day. MI as well. You're welcome to guest write one of our newsletters on Fridays. That's when we have guest writers. Absolutely anything. You just bring it to us. We'll do the editing, put it together. You just have to write for us. We'll happily have both of you as guest writers. I think that's it for us. Right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you soon. Okay, have a lovely day. Have a lovely day. Thank you, Phiona. Thank you, MI. Shout out to the both of you for doing this for us. Thank you.
Bye.
Have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye.